fun, I just made Potica. Potica is a classic Slovenian sweet bread pastry. It can take many forms, but I think the popular one and my favorite is walnut roll. So I've taken this out of the oven and I've let it cool, and I'm gonna slice it up. Now, I grew up with Potica. My mom literally made thousands of these when, as a teenager, she worked in the kitchen of a small 16th century castle in Slovenia. And that's where she learned how to make Potica, amongst other great things that she made. And that's where she also met my dad. He was a gardener. So, let me show you how I make this Potica. Starting with the dough. I've heated up in the microwave for 30 seconds 2/3 cups of homogenized milk. Bring this over here. That's nice and warm. You don't want this milk to be hot. Then in this bowl I have 1 tablespoon of granulated sugar and 1.5 teaspoon of traditional dry yeast. You can also use cake yeast if you can find it in your local deli or bakery, but I find they come in blocks, and if you don't use it a lot, it's just going to go to waste when you just need a tiny bit. So, just going to get that mixed in and let it do its job, which is getting that yeast bloomed. So I'll cover that up and let that rest. Now over here I have a bowl of golden seedless raisins, 1.5 cups of it. And in here I have 1/2 cup of dark rum. And I'm just going to mix this together because we want that raisins to be soaked in the rum. It'll make it nice and juicy and give it nice flavor to the Potica. So I'll set that aside. That'll come in much later. This is blooming. Over here in my stand mixer, I have 1/3 cup of unsalted butter at room temperature and 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. I'm just going to beat this together, cream it together. All right, now I'm going to add 3 egg yolks, one at a time. Save those egg whites. And beat this for 5 minutes. All right, it's been beating nice for 5 minutes. I'm going to take it apart so I can add more stuff to it. So keep the paddle there. I'm going to add 1 pack of vanilla sugar. They come in 9-gram packets. 1 teaspoon of salt. About 1 tablespoon of lemon zest. And 2/3 cups of homo milk, homogenized. You just want to mix all this together before you add in the flour and the yeast mixture. And speaking of flour, I've got 4 cups of flour here that I've sifted over a parchment paper, and I crumbled up the parchment paper just so it wouldn't keep curling up on me. And I've partially sifted. I'm just going to finish it off. 4 cups of all-purpose flour, nice and sifted. And then I'm just going to slowly grab it, bring it on over to that mixer, pray it doesn't spill out. And then I'm going to gradually add it to this mixing bowl. All your flour is in there. Just add that yeast mixture that's been sitting here. I'm going to add that in, and that is the last. Look how foamy that yeast is. It looks good. Still nice and warm. I'm going to scrape the bottom of this with my clean hands because there's some little bit of sugar and yeast left over there in the bottom. And then let this dough go for about 30 seconds. At which time we're going to transfer this paddleboard attachment into a knead hook. Let this machine do all the kneading work for you. So I'm going to end this right here and try to take off as much of the dough from this attachment as you can before you switch over to that knead hook. There we go. It's going to be a little sticky, but that's okay. After kneading it for a while, it will get less sticky. So in goes the knead hook, and then we're going to knead this for 10 minutes on low. Alright, let's check it. It's been kneading for 10 minutes. Let's take it apart. And you can tell if it's done, if you touch it, it's not sticking to your fingers when you take a grasp at it. So just clear off this knead hook. Take it out of this bowl. And then you want to divide this dough by 3. If you have a scale, I would use that. I always use it. I have a nice little scale I got. And what I do is, take this all together. You want this to be nice and smooth and elastic. So I'm going to take this dough, put it on my scale, weigh it, and divide it by 3. And each ball will be that amount. So I've got my 3 balls here, divided evenly by weight. I think about 340 grams each. So I'll just make sure, give it a quick final knead. All 3 of them. To get this rest, put these 3 balls in a well-greased bowl. And make sure you thoroughly coat each ball. And in between when they're touching each other, so when you're done resting these, they're easy to take out. Cover this bowl with a towel and let it rise in a warm place for 2 hours. I like to do it in my microwave oven. What I did was I started it for 1 minute with nothing in it. And in it goes. See you in 2 hours. While the dough is rising and resting, I'm going to work on the walnut filling. So in this bowl, I have 2 cups of finely ground walnuts. I measured this bowl before I put anything in it, and I'll explain why later. And to this, I'm going to add half a cup of hot homogenized milk. Hot homo milk. And I'm going to stir this up until the milk is all mixed in with the walnuts. And then you want to let this cool. While this is being cooled, we're going to get started on the whisking of the egg white. And now I have the egg whites. So I'm using this mixture, and I'm using the same bowl I made the dough in, but I thoroughly cleaned it. This has to, whatever bowl you use, it has to be thoroughly cleaned. And when you crack the eggs and separate them, you want to make sure there's no yellow yolks in there at all. And I've got my whisk attachment here. I'll just pour that in, and I'm going to get this going until stiff peaks. Alright, this has been whisking for about 4 minutes, but what you want is take this and you want stiff peaks that hold their peak. So I'm going to leave that for a second and come back to my walnut and milk mixture. To this, I will add 1 cup of sugar, the 1 pack of vanilla sugar, 9 grams. Give it a stir. And I'm going to add the zest of 1 lemon. A 1/4 cup of melted butter. 2 tablespoons of sour cream. And 2 tablespoons of dark rum. I'm going to mix that all together so it's nice and combined. Alright, It's all nice and combined. Let's get back to this whisk egg whites. And we're going to fold that in. Once all the egg whites are in, you just want to gently fold it. Go underneath and over. Underneath and over until it is well combined. All right, the walnut filling is ready. So I'm going to take the spoon away so I can measure it without the spoon. And if you recall, I measured that when this bowl was empty, and it was at 820, and this is now 1550. So I would subtract that and then divide it by 3, and that's how many grams of this filling will go into each pizza. So with that, it comes to about 243 grams, which I'll put in this bowl. This bowl alone weighs roughly 130. So 130 plus, we want 240. That's 370. So I'm going to keep filling this bowl until this says 370. And that's how I divide the filling equally amongst the pizzas. So nobody gets mad because one has more than the other. So the dough's ready and ready to be rolled out. I'm going to have my loaf pan right in front of me so I can measure when I roll out the dough. It'll be the width of this loaf pan. I took the parchment paper out for now. I'm going to lightly dust this clean counter with flour. You need lots of flour so the dough doesn't stick to the counter. I'm going to grab one of these balls and start spreading it out. I'm going to add a little bit more flour. I'm going to start spreading it out by hand. And I've got my rolling pin. I'm going to start rolling this beautiful dough out. And you want it to be the width of this loaf pan that we're going to bake it in. That's just one of 3. This recipe makes 3 pizzas, if I haven't mentioned that already. That's what I love about this recipe. 3 in 1. I mean, you're bringing out all the measuring cups and mixing bowls and making a mess. Might as well make 3 pizzas out of it. So that's all nice. Make sure it's all nice and even. You don't want the edges to be too thick because when you roll it up, not much filling goes to the end, and it's going to be mostly dough, bread, basically, at the ends. You don't really want that. Okay, let's see if that's about the width. Yep, that's good. Spread the ends out a bit more thinly up here. Make sure it's all nice and straight up and down the line. So I'm just going to pour this filling in the center. Make sure you get every little bit. This is good stuff. This is the stuff of legend. When my mom would make this in the kitchen, every time I passed by the kitchen, I would grab a spoon and take a little bit. And she would always yell at me. Memories. Alright, so I'll just spread this around evenly. I want to go right to the edges. Yeah, that's all spread out. Remember those raisins we had soaked in rum? Look, it's all absorbed. So I'm going to take 1/3 of this and just spread it out evenly. Like I said, if you don't like raisins, you don't have to put this in, but I do. Spread that out all nice and evenly. A little bit more. Okay, make sure you got everything onto the dough here, and then start rolling it up. And as you're rolling it up, start tucking in the sides and keep rolling. Keep rolling, rolling, keep rolling. Put that parchment paper back in. That makes it so much easier to take it out when it's done. If you don't have parchment paper, just make sure you coat it really well with butter. That way it won't stick. I'm going to place this in there, seam side down. Make sure it's right to the edge and spread it out evenly. There. One down, two to go. All right, done and done. Easy peasy, right? Well, it is fairly easy. It just takes time and work. So I'm going to poke holes in them. And I'm going to cover these and let these rest too. This won't take as long as the dough. But by the time you start preheating your oven now to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and by the time your oven is ready and you do some cleanup, this will be ready to go in at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 minutes. How you make potica. It's actually the loving tribute to my parents and my mom, who worked tirelessly in the kitchen of that small little 16th century castle in Slovenia called Potica. Cheers, Mom and Dad. Zdravia.